The alien woman needed the human man's body to survive. The desert stretched endlessly, a flat canvas of cracked earth and trembling heat waves, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed alive except the rattling insects that had perfected the art of stubborn survival. He sat on the hood of his old truck outside the diner that never closed, sipping bitter coffee from a paper cup he hadn't washed in weeks. The neon sign above the roof flickered, buzzing like a dying mosquito, casting half-formed words into the night. He had just begun to wonder if coffee could, in fact, taste worse than motor oil when something shimmered at the edge of the highway. At first he thought it was a mirage, heat bending light into strange shapes. But then the figure stumbled, knees buckling, arms reaching out in a gesture too human to be an illusion. He dropped the cup, muttering something about hallucinations from caffeine poisoning, and jogged forward. The figure collapsed just before reaching the gravel lot, and he caught her awkwardly, nearly tripping over his own boots. She was light, unnervingly so, like holding a bundle of wires rather than flesh. Her skin felt cold, not just cool like stone, but cold like the metal of a wrench left outside on a winter night. He adjusted his grip, muttering that he was no paramedic, but when her head lolled against his chest, he froze. Her ears, long, elegant, tapering to points that gleamed faintly under the broken neon, were nothing he had ever seen on Earth. "Great," he muttered. "Either I've picked up a cosplayer from some desert convention, or I've inhaled too much gasoline." Her eyes fluttered open, silver irises catching the faint starlight. She whispered something, the words brittle, as if each one cracked before leaving her lips. He leaned closer, only catching fragments, a language that sang like wind through shattered glass. When his hand shifted against her shoulder, she gasped, body jolting as if he'd given her a shot of pure electricity. That startled him enough to nearly drop her. "Okay, not dead. Definitely not dead. That's progress." She clung to his wrist, grip trembling but firm. Her voice broke into English, fragile and halting. "Don't stop. Please. Don't stop." He blinked, heat rushing to his face in spite of himself. "Lady, I don't even know what I started." She pressed closer, the chill of her skin easing into something warmer with every second. He felt it, a subtle thrumming under her flesh, like the hum of an engine finally turning over after years of silence. He knew machines better than people, and this woman, if she was even a woman in the human sense, was running on fumes. Somehow his touch was the fuel. Carrying her inside the diner felt like the only option. The place was empty except for a jukebox that hadn't worked since the 70s, and a bored waitress who didn't look up from her crossword puzzle. He slid into a booth, setting the woman against the cracked vinyl seat. She didn't release his hand, her silver eyes watching him as though the very act of letting go would mean the end. He tried humor, because humor was easier than panic. "So, you're obviously not from around here. I'd say welcome to Earth. But judging from your condition, it's not exactly a 5-star experience." Her head tilted slightly, ears twitching faintly, as if she was trying to understand the joke. Then slowly, her lips curved into something like a smile. It wasn't quite right, too sharp, too uncertain, but it was there. "You help," she whispered. "Touch help." "Well, that's new," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Usually, people just want jumper cables or a tow. Guess I'm expanding my services." When his hand brushed hers again, strength visibly returned to her posture. Her shoulders straightened, the hollow shadows under her eyes fading. She exhaled, a sound almost like relief, and whispered a word he didn't know. He asked what it meant, and she only shook her head, pressing her palm more firmly against his. He decided introductions were overdue. "Name's Mason. Mechanic. Fix things that shouldn't still be running. Kind of like you, I guess." She considered this, lips shaping his name slowly, as though the syllables themselves were foreign. "Mason." The word shimmered oddly in her mouth. "I am. Elira." "Well, Elira," he said, "you've got some explaining to do. Preferably before the waitress decides to call the sheriff, because I brought in a lady with elf ears at midnight." As if on cue, the waitress finally glanced up, squinting at them. Mason lifted a hand and called out, "Don't worry, she's just jet-lagged." He laughed nervously. The waitress rolled her eyes and went back to her crossword. Elira's gaze flicked between him and the waitress, confusion knitting her brow. Jet lag. Yeah, he said. It's what we say when someone's tired from traveling. Though I'm guessing your trip makes ours look like a bus ride. Her silence confirmed more than any explanation could. Mason leaned back, shaking his head. Of course. I finally meet a woman who actually needs me around, and she's from another planet. Figures. Elira tilted her head again, ears twitching faintly. Need yes. You keep me alive. He groaned. Great. No pressure or anything. Just the survival of the mysterious alien with pointy ears. Totally fine. Definitely not the weirdest Tuesday I've had. But as he sat there, her hand clasped around his like a lifeline, he couldn't shake the spark that pulsed between them. Machines had circuits, wires, fuel lines. People had hearts, nerves, lungs. Whatever she was, she ran on something else entirely, and for reasons beyond his grasp, that something else was him? Mason's workshop smelled like a blend of gasoline, dust, and leftover pizza crusts that had been forgotten long enough to qualify as archaeological artifacts. Elira sat on a stool near his workbench, her long ears twitching whenever a tool clattered too loudly. She hadn't let go of his wrist the entire walk from the diner, and now she clung as though his grease-stained hand was some kind of sacred artifact. He wanted to joke that she'd picked the wrong prophet, but figure her vocabulary might not yet include sarcasm. So, Mason said, flipping open the hood of a car that had been dead longer than some marriages. You're an alien. Which, by the way, is not the weirdest thing I've heard in this town. But why me? I mean, I'm just a guy with a wrench. If you needed premium fuel, I could help. But life support? Not really on my resume. Elira studied him, head tilted, eyes unblinking in that unnerving way she had. Your touch. It makes me stable. Without it, cells collapse. Like. She reached for a wrench, tapped it against the table, and the sound cracked like brittle glass. Like this. Break. Mason winced at the metaphor, mostly because he was fond of his tools. So, let me get this straight. Earth's air is basically poison for you. Your body's falling apart, but for some reason, contact with me is like plugging into a universal charger. Yes. Why not someone else? Why not? I don't know. The waitress from the diner. She looks sturdier than me. Elira blinked slowly. Only you. Well, lucky me. Mason muttered. Out of 7 billion humans, you picked the one guy who hasn't done laundry since last Thursday. Her ears twitched, and for the first time he swore he saw the corner of her mouth curve. It wasn't a full smile. More like her face was trying to remember how. Mason grinned despite himself. Hey, was that a joke? Or are you laughing at my expense? Laugh, strange sound, Elira admitted, her voice soft. She mimicked it, producing a noise like a flute player being strangled. Mason burst out laughing for real, doubling over until his sides hurt. That, he wheezed, that was terrible. But also, top 10 funniest things I've ever heard. You're a natural comedian. Just, maybe don't quit your day job. Whatever it is. Her expression softened, though her hand still clamped to his like a vice. She leaned forward slightly. My day job is survival. Mason rubbed the back of his neck. Right, kind of a step up from fixing carburetors. The workshop lights flickered suddenly. Elira's eyes snapped upward, pupils narrowing. Mason frowned. Relax, it's just the wiring. This place has worse electrical problems than a haunted carnival ride. But she shook her head. Not wiring. Watch. Outside. A faint hum rose, almost imperceptible at first. Mason stepped to the doorway, peering into the desert night. A drone hovered in the distance, its metallic wings slicing the darkness with cold blue light. He swore under his breath. Government. Or maybe some company that's got too much time and money. Elira tensed, ears quivering like antennae. They search. For me. Of course they do. Mason muttered. Couldn't have been a quiet alien vacation. Nope, it's a full-on manhunt. Or woman hunt. Or whatever you are. Do they know about me? Not yet. Mason sighed, grabbing a dusty tarp from a shelf and throwing it over the car engine. Then let's keep it that way. Stay low, and whatever you do, don't start glowing or sprouting antennae. People around here get suspicious if your haircut looks too futuristic. Alira frowned. Futuristic? Never mind, Mason said, running a hand down his face. Point is, you're not safe. But lucky for you, I'm a guy with a truck and a serious lack of better options. Guess we'll have to figure this out together. She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. Together? Yes. You keep me alive. Yeah. Add it to my job description. Mechanic, tow truck driver, life support unit for stranded alien women. Her ears twitched again, and this time Mason was sure she was amused. She even attempted another laugh, though it came out like a malfunctioning radio. Mason chuckled anyway. The hum of the drone faded into the distance, leaving silence heavy in its wake. Mason exhaled. Well, that was fun. Nothing like government surveillance to spice up a Friday night. Alira's grip tightened. More will come. Always more. Great, Mason muttered. Guess we'll need a plan. Step 1, keep you alive. Step 2, figure out what you're actually doing here. Step 3, hope Step 1 and 2 don't get me arrested. She blinked at him, her silver eyes impossibly steady. You are strange, but you help. Mason smirked, reaching for a wrench. Story of my life, lady. Strange, but helpful. Stick with me. You might just survive this rock. And hey, maybe I'll even teach you how to laugh, without sounding like a dying accordion. Mason had never thought he'd be sneaking through city streets with an alien clinging to his hand like a toddler afraid of being lost in the mall. But here he was, ducking behind dumpsters and whispering about how garbage smelled the same on every planet. Alira moved stiffly, as though every step on Earth felt wrong, her silver eyes darting toward every shadow. He tried to lighten the mood. You know, if you're going to blend in, you're going to have to work on the whole suspicious lurking thing. Right now you look like you're auditioning for a horror movie. She whispered. Blend in. How? Well, first, stop looking like a deer about to be mugged. Second, maybe tuck those ears under a hat. He dug into his backpack and pulled out a greasy baseball cap with the logo of a long-defunct gas station. There. Stylish. Vintage. Definitely not alien chic. She examined the cap as though it were a piece of alien tech, then slid it on, ears folding awkwardly beneath. Mason stifled a laugh. Perfect. Now you just look like a tourist who got lost on their way to Vegas. As they walked, drones drifted above the rooftops, their blue searchlights sweeping the streets. Mason pulled her into a laundromat that still buzzed with the hum of ancient machines. The place was empty, save for one dryer spinning endlessly, with no clothes inside. Mason whispered, We'll wait here until the sky clears. Unless you want to introduce yourself to the authorities with your glowing charm and accordion laugh. Her lips twitched at the word. Accordion. Yeah, don't ask. Humans build instruments that sound like dying geese on purpose. It's a long story. The hum of the drones moved on, and Alira slumped onto a bench, her hand still gripping his. Mason pretended not to notice how her fingers dug into his palm, like she was anchoring herself to existence. He fiddled with a coin slot, muttering, Great. Out of all the humans on this rock, you just had to bump into me. You know there are people with actual medical degrees, right? Alira's silver eyes locked on him. Not them. Only you. Mason tried to laugh it off, though his chest tightened. Well, congratulations. You've officially picked the least qualified life support system in the galaxy. I fix carburetors, not whatever's going on with your cells. You fix machines. Me machine. Wow. Flattering. First woman to call me a tool, and mean it literally. Her head tilted, processing the joke, and then she produced a sound that might have been an attempt at laughter, but came out like static on an old radio. Mason shook his head, grinning despite himself. We're going to have to work on your comedic timing. The laundromat lights flickered, and Alira's expression sharpened. Mason followed her gaze. A faint shimmer rippled through the air near the doorway, like heat waves bending reality. He cursed under his breath. Tell me that's just bad wiring again. She shook her head. Not wiring. Hunter drones. They bend light. Hide. Fantastic, Mason muttered, dragging her toward the row of spinning machines. We're hiding in a laundromat. Real heroic. At least if they catch us, our last stand will smell like fabric softener. The shimmer passed, leaving only silence and the steady hum of the dryer. Mason exhaled, heart pounding. Elira leaned closer, her voice trembling. You joke, even when danger. Yeah, he said. Keeps me from screaming. Want me to teach you that too? She blinked at him. Teach me screaming? Not exactly, Mason chuckled. We'll stick with laughter lessons for now. When the danger seemed to fade, they slipped out again, weaving through alleyways until the rusting skeleton of a shipyard loomed ahead. Elira slowed, her steps faltering. Mason frowned. This is it, isn't it? Your ship's here. She nodded, ears twitching beneath the cap. Half buried. Broken. Needs repair. Of course it does, Mason sighed. Let me guess. I'm the only guy handy enough to fix alien engines with duct tape and a wrench. Her silver eyes glimmered. Yes. He groaned. I should have stayed in the diner. At least the worst I had to fix, there was a leaky coffee machine. They reached the wreckage, half hidden under tarps and scrap metal. Mason whistled low. Well, you weren't kidding. Looks like someone tried to park this thing after 10 shots of tequila. Elira frowned. Tequila. Never mind. Earth joke. She stepped closer to the wreck, her hand trembling as she brushed the metal hull. Mason saw the way her posture straightened as her fingers lingered against him, the energy flowing again, the spark of life knitting her strength back together. He muttered, Guess I'm not just a mechanic. I'm the jumper cables too. She met his eyes, voice low but steady. Without you, I end. He tried to deflect with humor, as always. No pressure then. Just keep an alien alive while fixing her interstellar getaway car and avoiding the guys with invisibility cloaks. Totally doable. Elira's lips curved, just slightly. Doable. Mason sighed, rubbing his temple. Lady, you really have no idea what you've dragged me into. But when she squeezed his hand again, he realized he wasn't planning to walk away. Mason had fixed plenty of machines in his life, from stubborn lawnmowers to trucks that belched smoke like dragons with indigestion, but nothing in his toolbox prepared him for the mess of cables, crystals, and humming conduits that made up Elira's ship. He knelt inside the cracked hull, flashlight clamped between his teeth, muttering around it. Okay, so this thing looks like a dishwasher married a nuclear reactor and had a really ugly baby. You sure it's supposed to be wired like this? Elira crouched nearby, her hand on the metal, ears twitching like radar dishes. Not wired. Woven. Energy flows. Like blood. Mason spat out the flashlight. Great. So I'm performing open-heart surgery on a spaceship. No pressure. She tilted her head. Pressure? There is much. That was a joke. He sighed, wiping grease across his cheek. I crack jokes when I'm nervous. Which, by the way, is always. So get used to it. Her silver eyes studied him for a long moment. Then she attempted her strange, static-like laugh. Mason grinned despite himself. Okay, that was actually closer. You're evolving. Next thing you know, you'll be heckling me. Her hand slid toward his wrist, the familiar thrum of energy flaring when she touched him. The spark ran through both of them, leaving him breathless for half a second. Mason cleared his throat loudly, trying to cover it. So, about this energy flow. Do I need to worry about accidentally jump-starting myself into a pile of ashes? No. You stable. You anchor. Good to know. I always wanted to be an anchor. I thought about becoming a news anchor once, but I don't look good in suits. She blinked, uncomprehending, but her lips twitched at the edges. Mason turned back to the mess of conduits before him, pretending not to notice how her gaze lingered too long, how her grip never truly loosened. Outside the wreckage, the sky buzzed faintly with the sound of drones. Mason cursed under his breath. They're like mosquitoes. Persistent, loud, and impossible to swat. How advanced can you guys be if you can't even shake a few flying toasters? Elira stiffened. Not few. Many. They spread. Everywhere. Yeah, I got that part. Don't worry. Earth's got plenty of places to hide. Some of them even have good tacos. Tacos. He waved her off. Later. First priority, not getting caught. The ship groaned as he twisted a bolt into place, sparks flying briefly before settling into a low hum. Mason sat back, wiping sweat from his forehead. Okay, I think I've convinced your interstellar jalopy to stop sulking. But don't get too excited. It's still more broken than my bank account. Elira leaned forward, brushing her fingers against the glowing conduit. The light steadied, pulsing in rhythm with her breath. Mason felt the tug of connection again, as though some invisible cord tied them together. She whispered, "It listens. Because of you." "Yeah, or because I jammed the right bolt into the right hole." Mason muttered, "Don't make me sound like a galactic messiah. I'm just a guy with a wrench and a questionable sense of humor." Her gaze softened. "You more." He froze, caught off guard by the weight of her words. "Look, Elira, I'm not exactly hero material. I once got stuck in my own garage door. Twice. So if you're pinning your species' survival on me, you might want to reconsider." Her hand tightened around his, the silver glow in her eyes unwavering. "No reconsider. You." Mason swallowed hard, then forced a grin. "Well, I guess if I'm stuck being the chosen one, I should at least negotiate perks. Do I get free fuel? A shiny alien badge? Maybe a cool cape?" She tilted her head. "Cape? Yeah, forget it. Bad Earth fashion trend. Mostly for magicians and comic book guys." The hum of drones swelled again, closer this time. Mason shut off the flashlight, peering through the crack in the hull. 3 machines hovered outside, their blue beams slicing across the desert sand. He whispered, "Great. They brought backup, because clearly we weren't having enough fun." Elira's grip on him pulsed with desperate strength. "They sense energy. They sense me." "Well, that's convenient," Mason muttered. "Any chance they're allergic to sarcasm? Because I've got plenty." She shook her head. "We must go. Now." Mason grabbed his toolbox, slinging it over his shoulder. "Fine. But next time we're hiding somewhere with air conditioning. Or at least a vending machine." They slipped out the back of the wreckage, crouching low as the drone swept overhead. Mason kept up a steady stream of muttered jokes, half to distract her, half to stop his own heart from pounding through his ribs. "If we survive this, I'm charging you double. Survival tax. Very exclusive." Her static laugh sputtered out again, and despite the danger, Mason felt the corners of his mouth tug upward. Maybe humor wasn't just keeping him sane. Maybe it was keeping her alive, too. Mason had never pictured himself standing inside an alien ship, consoles glowing like 1,000 neon signs, while an entire fleet of drones circled overhead like hungry vultures. But life had a funny way of throwing curveballs, and apparently his was the save the alien girl, save the world variety. He tightened the last panel on the control core, muttering, "There. Good as new. Or at least good enough not to explode in our faces. I think." Elira's hand slid into his again, that familiar hum of energy sparking between them. She whispered, "It works. Because of you." Mason shook his head. "Nah, it works because I hit it with a wrench until it listened. That's 90% of engineering right there." Her lips twitched, her laugh still more static than sound, but closer to real now. He grinned. "See, you're improving. Another week with me, and you'll be telling knock-knock jokes." "Knock-knock?" she asked, ears tilting. "Later," Mason said quickly. "Let's not add comedy routines to the death-defying escape just yet." The drones outside intensified their search, blue beams cutting across the cracked hull. Mason peered through a viewport. "They really don't give up, do they? Reminds me of my high school gym teacher. Guy once chased me a mile because I borrowed a basketball." Elira pressed her palm to the console, and the ship answered with a low hum that made the floor vibrate. Mason steadied himself. "So this is it, huh? We either take off and outrun the toasters, or we end up as scrap metal with bonus screaming." She looked at him, her silver eyes soft but fierce. "I cannot leave without you." He blinked. "Hold up. You mean me, personally? Or like, the general concept of me? Because I've got unpaid bills, and a truck full of rust waiting back home. "You," she said firmly. "Only you keep me alive." He groaned. "Figures. Out of 7 billion humans, you picked a guy who once set his microwave on fire reheating pizza." But her hand squeezed his, and he felt that pull again, stronger than fear, stronger than reason. For once, he didn't try to deflect it with a joke. "All right, I'm in. But if your people expect me to wear some fancy robe and chant alien prayers, I'm drawing the line." The ship's engines roared, light flooding through the cockpit. Outside, drones spun in agitation, their scanners flaring brighter. Mason gritted his teeth. "Hang on, Alira. This is going to be bumpier than my last blind date." The ship surged upward, breaking free of the sand. Drones fired beams that sliced through the night, but Alira's ship wove between them with impossible grace, guided by her hands and powered, somehow, by their connection. Mason hooped as they shot into the sky. "Huh, take that, you overpriced flying blenders." The earth shrank below them, blue and fragile, as the ship broke through the atmosphere. Mason stared out the viewport, breathless. "Well, guess I finally left the state. Technically." Alira turned toward him, her ears glimmering faintly in the console light. "You saved me. You saved all of us." "Don't give me too much credit," he said. "I mostly just held your hand and cracked bad jokes. You did the hard part." She shook her head. "Without you, I die. Without you, ship sleeps forever. You are anchor." Mason swallowed, then forced a crooked smile. "Yeah, well, anchors usually sink. But maybe this time I'll float." They emerged into orbit, where another ship, larger, sleeker, waited, its lights shimmering like a second sunrise. Alira's people. Mason felt his stomach twist. "So this is it, huh? You'll go with them. They'll take you home. And me, I'll go back to my truck and my half-broken coffee maker." But Alira didn't let go. "No, you come. You are part of this now." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Me? In space? Lady, I can barely handle cable TV, and you wanted to handle the cosmos." Her grip didn't waver. "You already do." The hatch of the largest ship opened, figures with the same long ears and silver eyes waiting. Mason hesitated, looking at them, then at her. He thought about the diner, the workshop, the drones, the spark in her touch. He realized he'd spent his whole life fixing broken machines, but for the first time, he'd fixed something more. He exhaled slowly. "All right, Alira. Guess this mechanic's going interstellar." She smiled, truly smiled, no static, no hesitation, and together they stepped into the light of her people's ship. For Mason, the guy who once thought survival meant making it through another greasy cup of diner coffee, the universe had just opened its doors, and this time, he wasn't walking through them alone. The end,